Number 37. Serafina Hayes smirked, deleting another unread message from my phone. 37 declarations of undying affection for my husband today alone. She turned, her fingers digging into my chin. It seems last night's lesson wasn't enough. My name is Ethan Vance. I'm just your average college student, except for one not-so-average problem. I was born with what I call the charm. It's not some kind of superpower. It's a damn curse. Ever since kindergarten, it's been the same story. Man, woman, child, even animals spend more than 5 minutes with me, and they're inexplicably drawn in. Elementary school, it was girls slipping me crinkled notes onto the desk. Middle school, they were literally fighting over who got to sit next to me at lunch. By high school, even a mangy stray cat that hung around the school gates would only take food from my hand. Ethan, I baked these cookies for you. Hey, Ethan, I'm totally stuck on this cow problem. Can you help a girl out? Ethan, you busy this weekend? I've got an extra ticket to that concert. Every day on campus, it's a relentless barrage of unwanted attention. I'm like a walking, talking magnet for every kind of romantic or not-so-romantic interest. The worst part? I have zero control over it. It's as natural and involuntary as breathing. Here we go again. I sighed, watching the umpteenth girl accidentally trip, clearly aiming for a dramatic fall into my arms as I walked across the quad. I sidestepped smoothly. She hit the pavement with a dull thud. Sorry, sweetheart, but my personal space is more important than your kneecaps. He's so cool and mysterious. I love it. The girl scrambled up, eyes sparkling like she just won the lottery. See, even outright rejection gets twisted into part of my irresistible charm. I quickened my pace, trying to make a clean getaway, completely oblivious to a pair of ice-cold eyes watching me from the shadows of the library's upper floors. Those eyes belonged to Serafina Hayes, campus legend, heiress to the vast Hayes Corporation fortune. Rumor had it her family could buy half the state, but her personality was colder than a winter in Maine. Aside from mandatory classes, she barely interacted with anyone. The definitive ice queen, beautiful and utterly unapproachable. What I didn't know was that this particular ice queen had been watching me for a full year. Rejected another one. Serafina Hayes stood on the rooftop terrace of the business school, watching my hasty retreat through a pair of high-power binoculars. A dangerous curve touched her lips. My little star is certainly popular, isn't he? Her slender fingers, tipped with nails painted a dark crimson that looked unsettlingly like dried blood, tapped against the metal casing of the binoculars. It seems it's time to take action. That night, on my way back to the dorm after a late study session, someone grabbed me from behind, a cloth clamped hard over my nose and mouth. A sickly sweet, cloying scent flooded my senses, and my consciousness rapidly blurred. My last memory was a pair of surprisingly cold hands and a soft, possessive whisper in my ear, "Finally caught you, my little star." When I next woke up, I was lying on an enormous king-size bed, a canopy of what looked like pink chiffon billowing overhead. I shot upright, then fell back with a jolt as something metallic on my wrist pulled taut, clinking softly. What the hell? My right wrist was cuffed to the ornate headboard by a delicate but undeniably strong silver chain. It was long enough for me to move around the immediate vicinity of the bed, but definitely not long enough to reach the door or windows of the opulent bedroom. The room itself was like a deranged dollhouse exploded, all lace, silk, and oversized velvet bows. And the walls were covered, floor to ceiling, in photographs of me. Candid shots, sleeping shots, me laughing, me studying. A stalker's paradise. Awake. A cool, composed voice drifted from the doorway. I whipped my head around and nearly choked on my own spit. Serafina Hayes leaned against the doorframe, draped in a black silk nightgown that left little to the imagination. Her dark hair cascaded around her shoulders like a waterfall, her lips a slash of defiant crimson. The neckline of the gown plunged daringly low, revealing a swath of smooth, pale skin. But what truly sent a jolt of pure fear down my spine was the object she was casually twirling in her perfectly manicured fingers, a pair of gleaming, sharp-looking sewing scissors. Serafina, where am I? What are you? I tugged at the chain on my wrist, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. This is my private residence. She glided towards me, her designer heels sinking silently into the plush, cream-colored carpet. As for why, she leaned in close, so close I could smell the expensive perfume clinging to her skin. The tip of the scissors traced a feather-light, ice-cold line along my cheek. I froze, every muscle tense. Because you've been a very, very naughty boy. Her voice was honey-sweet, but her eyes were like chips of polished obsidian. Flitting from one admirer to the next, collecting hearts like trophies. I've tolerated it for years, Ethan. I've reached my limit. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. I can explain, it's not my fault. I have this condition. I know. She cut me off smoothly, her fingertips brushing against my collarbone, sending an unwanted shiver through me. The charm. Your delightful, natural magnetism. But do you know, her voice dropped to a husky, conspiratorial whisper, when I see all those other people buzzing around you right here. She grabbed my hand, pressing it firmly against her silk-covered chest. It hurts. I could feel her heart hammering against my palm, a frantic, rapid rhythm. And, wait a minute, that texture beneath the silk. You're not wearing a bra. I snatched my hand back as if I'd been burned, my face instantly flaming a shade of red that probably matched her lipstick. Serafina let out a low, throaty chuckle, a sound that was both amused and deeply unsettling. Shy are we? How? Adorable. She set down the scissors and picked up a sleek tablet from the antique nightstand. Let's review the schedule I've meticulously prepared for you. The screen lit up with a detailed spreadsheet. The title at the top read, Project, My Little Star, Daily Regimen. Regimen? My eyes widened in disbelief. 7 a.m. Wake-up call. 7:30 a.m. Breakfast together in the solarium. 8 a.m. Accompany me while I attend to Hayes Corporation business via teleconference. She ignored my sputtering protests, continuing to read aloud in a calm, even tone. 3:00 p.m. Afternoon tea and quiet reflection. 7 p.m. Romantic dinner, chef's choice. 10 p.m. bedtime. Wait, stop. I have classes, a life, my family, my friends. They'll be worried sick. All neatly taken care of, she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. I've already arranged an indefinite leave of absence from Northwood University for you. I used your phone to send a well-crafted text to your parents explaining your sudden decision to join an exclusive, off-grid exchange program in a remote part of Europe. As for your roommates, they received a rather generous sum for their discretion. They won't be asking questions. I was utterly floored, speechless for a moment. This is kidnapping. False imprisonment. I'm calling the cops. Serafina's smile vanished, replaced by a chillingly blank expression. She seized my chin again, her grip surprisingly strong, tight enough to make my eyes water with pain. The cops. She laughed, a cold, brittle sound devoid of any humor. Do you honestly believe they'd take the word of some ordinary college student over the Heiress to the Hayes Corporation? Please. Besides, her thumb brushed slowly, deliberately against my lips, a strangely intimate gesture. Could you really bear to leave me, Ethan? And the strangest, most terrifying part, as she leaned closer, her unique, intoxicating scent filling my nostrils, I did feel that damned, inexplicable pull again. It wasn't just her stunning, almost ethereal beauty or the power she radiated. There was something else, something familiar about her, an odd sense of déjà vu, as if our souls had known each other in another life. Why are you really doing this? I whispered, the fight momentarily draining out of me. Her gaze softened, the predatory glint in her eyes receding, replaced by something raw and vulnerable. She released my chin. Because only when I'm near you, Ethan, do I feel alive. This answer, so stark and desperate, left me stunned. Serafina straightened up, walking over to the massive bay window and pulling back the heavy velvet curtains. Moonlight flooded the room, bathing her in an ethereal silver glow. I have emotional cognitive disorder, she said, her back to me, her voice flat. I've had it since I was a child. Therapist, medication. Nothing worked. Until 3 months ago, in Professor Albright's ethics seminar. I saw you. She turned, and in the moonlight, she looked unreal, like a figure from a dream. That moment, Ethan, was the first time in my entire life I understood what it felt like to want something. To want to touch you. to possess you, to make you mine, and mine alone. I didn't know what to say. Part of me was screaming that this was insane, certifiable. Another, much quieter part, was strangely moved by her raw, painful honesty. "Are you hungry?" she asked suddenly, the shift in tone jarring, as if the profound confession had never happened. I had Chef Antoine prepare dinner. My stomach, as if on cue, let out an embarrassingly loud growl. Serafina actually smiled then, a genuine, almost childlike smile that transformed her face, making her look younger, less formidable. "Good boy. Let's eat first." She unclipped the chain from my wrist. But just as I tensed, ready to make a break for it, she pressed a hand on my shoulder, her touch surprisingly firm. "Don't even think about running. The estate has 30 security guards, all armed, all very loyal." I slowly lowered myself back onto the bed. Serafina nodded, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. She snapped her fingers. The bedroom door opened, and a middle-aged woman in a crisp, professional-looking uniform, not quite a maid's outfit, more like a high-end household manager's, pushed in a gleaming silver serving cart. "Dinner is served, madam," the woman said respectfully. "And madam," I nearly tumbled off the bed. "Mrs. Davison, please don't startle him," Serafina said with a mock-reproachful glance at the woman, then turned to me. "Mrs. Davison has been with my family for over 20 years. Old habits." Mrs. Davison gave me a kind, almost maternal smile, then efficiently set out an array of covered dishes on a small table near the window before quietly exiting the room. The cart held some of my absolute favorite comfort foods: slow-cooked barbecue ribs, grilled salmon with asparagus, a creamy tomato soup, and a basket of warm sourdough bread. "How did you know these are my favorites?" I asked, genuinely bewildered. "I know everything about you, Ethan." Serafina placed a generous portion of ribs on a plate for me. Height, 5'11". Weight, 170 pounds. Birthday, May 20th. Favorite color, forest green. Allergic to penicillin. Dislike, overcooked broccoli. You have a small, crescent-shaped birthmark on your left shoulder blade. I instinctively clutch my left shoulder. "You're a psycho-stalker." "I prefer to call it thorough research," she corrected, elegantly dissecting a piece of salmon. "Now eat. It'll get cold." Despite the utter insanity of the situation, the food smelled incredible, and I was starving. I dug in, trying to ignore her intense gaze. Serafina, for her part, barely touched her food, content to watch me, her chin propped on her hand, an unervingly tender expression on her face. "Slow down. No one's going to take it from you," she murmured, passing me a glass of iced tea. After I'd eaten my fill, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. Serafina noticed me yawning and rose, pressing a discreet button on the wall. A few moments later, Mrs. Davison reappeared with 2 other staff members to clear the dishes. "Time for your bath and then bed," Serafina announced. "The inn suite is through there. Pajamas have been laid out for you." I looked at her warily. "You're not going to watch, are you?" She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Ethan, darling, if I truly wanted to watch, do you think I need to do it secretly?" She took a step towards me, a playful glint in her eyes, as if she might just decide to undress me herself. "I can manage," I yelped, clutching the front of my t-shirt, and practically leaped off the bed, bolting for the indicated bathroom door and locking it firmly behind me. The bathroom was palatial, with a jacuzzi tub big enough for 4, a rainforest shower, and an array of expensive-looking toiletries. On a heated rack, a pair of soft, navy blue silk pajamas lay folded, smelling faintly of lavender, the same subtle scent that clung to Serafina. I took the quickest shower of my life, and, as I slipped into the luxurious pajamas, I couldn't shake the feeling of unreality. When I emerged, the bedroom had been transformed. The dining table and cart were gone, the bed turned down invitingly, and a soft lamp cast a warm glow from the nightstand. Serafina, now wearing a surprisingly modest set of silk pajamas, though still black, was sitting up in bed, reading a thick hardcover book. "Come here." She patted the empty space beside her. I hesitated for a long moment. Then, figuring any escape plan would require observation and biding my time, I walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. The instant I settled, Serafina's arm snaked around my waist, pulling me against her. She was slender, but her grip was like steel. I struggled for a few seconds, then gave up. It was pointless. "Don't fidget," she whispered, her lips brushing my ear, her warm breath sending shivers down my spine. "Or I can't guarantee what might happen next." I immediately went rigid. Serafina chuckled softly, a low please sound. She reached over and switched off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness, save for the moonlight filtering through the sheer curtains. She held me close. Strangely, disturbingly, being held like this by my kidnapper, I felt a profound, almost unnerving sense of peace wash over me. Her heartbeat, steady and strong against my back, was like a hypnotic lullaby, and my eyelids grew heavy. Just as I was drifting off, she spoke, her voice soft in the darkness. "Tomorrow, I'm taking you to meet someone." "Who?" I mumbled, half asleep. "My psychiatrist," she said, a hint of hesitation in her tone. "I want to confirm your effect on me." I didn't have the energy to ask more questions before sleep claimed me. My dreams were bizarre. I was being chased through a moonlit forest by a sleek black panther. When it finally cornered me, pouncing, it transformed mid-air into Serafina, who then proceeded to gently lick my face. The next morning, I was woken by kisses. Yes, actual kisses. Serafina was systematically planting soft, warm pecks all over my face with a focused determination. "Stop, stop," I mumbled, batting at her weakly with one hand. This is too much." "Good morning kisses are part of the regimen," she stated, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She then produced a laden breakfast tray from seemingly nowhere, like a magician. Breakfast in bed. The tray held perfectly golden scrambled eggs, artisan toast with homemade jam, and a tall glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. My stomach, predictably, betrayed me with a loud rumble. Serafina smiled, that rare, genuine smile, and placed the tray on my lap. She sat on the edge of the bed, watching me eat. Today, she was dressed in a crisp white blouse and a tailored black pencil skirt, her dark hair pulled back into a sleek, high ponytail. She looked like a CEO about to chair a board meeting. A very sexy, slightly terrifying CEO. "Don't you have to, run your empire or something?" I asked between bites of toast. "I'm the boss. I go in when I feel like it," she said airily, idly twirling a strand of my hair around her finger. "Besides, I have more important matters to attend to right now." That's when I remembered, the psychiatrist. A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. What if the doctor told her I had no real effect on her? Would she dispose of me? "Don't worry." As if reading my mind, Serafina gently squeezed my cheek. "Whatever the outcome, you're mine." The words should have sent a fresh wave of terror through me. Instead, my heart gave an odd, traitorous little flutter. Damn it. Was this Stockholm Syndrome already? After breakfast, Serafina personally selected an outfit for me. A simple white t-shirt and light wash jeans. Clean, classic, unthreatening. "You look very handsome like this," she murmured, adjusting the collar of my shirt, her fingers deliberately brushing against the sensitive skin of my neck, making me shiver. What about the chain?" I asked, try to sound casual. Surely, she wouldn't make me see a psychiatrist while literally chained. Serafina tilted her head, considering. Then, she went to a dresser and pulled out a small, velvet box. Inside was a sleek, modern silver bracelet. "Wear this instead." I took it. Engraved on the inner clasp, in tiny, elegant script, were the words, "Property of S. Hayes." Can I refuse? "Of course you can, darling," she said with a saccharine smile. "In which case, it's back to the chain, and you can wait for me here." Locked to the bed. I quickly snapped the bracelet onto my wrist. Serafina nodded, satisfied. She took my hand, her fingers lacing through mine. "Let's go. Dr. Evans is expecting us." Stepping out of the bedroom, I finally got a sense of the sheer scale of Serafina's private residence. It wasn't a house. It was a bona fide mansion. The hallway was wide enough to drive a car down, lined with what looked like original Impressionist paintings. Marble floors gleamed underfoot, and a sweeping staircase with a gilded balustrade dominated the grand foyer. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see meticulously landscaped gardens, a sparkling blue swimming pool, and several gardeners already at work. "Your place is really big." I managed, my voice sounding weak. Do you like it? She squeezed my hand. It could be our home, you know. I wisely chose not to respond to that. The garage housed at least a dozen luxury cars. Serafina selected a surprisingly understated black Mercedes sedan. As I got in, she leaned over to buckle my seatbelt, using the opportunity to steal a quick, soft kiss. "That's your fare," she said, her eyes glinting with amusement, before starting the engine. I touched my lips, my heart thudding. I was officially a kidnapped victim. So why did this feel disturbingly like a twisted date? As the car glided through a set of imposing wrought iron gates, I noticed several burly men in dark suits stationed discreetly near the entrance. Their jackets bulged in a way that suggested they weren't just there for decoration. The difficulty level of any escape attempt just skyrocketed. "Don't even think about running, my little star," Serafina said, her eyes on the road, her tone light but firm. "There's a GPS tracker in the bracelet. I'd find you if you ran to the ends of the earth." You win. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to a sleek, modern high-rise in a very expensive part of the city. And private elevator whisked us directly to the top floor. Serafina led me, with an air of familiarity, into a tastefully decorated office suite. "Dr. Evans," she greeted the distinguished, silver-haired man seated behind a large mahogany desk. "Serafina, good to see you again." Dr. Evans smiled warmly. Then his gaze shifted to me. "And this must be Ethan Vance," Serafina said, her voice softening as she looked at me, a strange, luminous light in her eyes. "My medicine." Dr. Evans gestured for us to sit, then began his questions. He asked Serafina about her recent emotional state, her perceptions of people and events, her sleep patterns, her appetite. As they talked, I was taken aback by the depth of Serafina's condition. It was far more severe than she had let on. Before meeting me, she had been almost entirely unable to form genuine emotional connections, even with her own father. The world, for her, had been a muted landscape of grays. "So Mr. Vance, Dr. Evans eventually turned to her. "What specific impact does he have on you, Serafina?" Serafina turned to me, her gaze so intense, so incredibly tender, it made my breath catch. "He's the only person who makes me feel anything. Anger, jealousy, happiness. Even, I think, love." She reached for my hand, her fingers gripping mine tightly. "When he looks at someone else, I feel a rage I can barely control. When he smiles at me, it's like the sun coming out, and the thought of losing him." Her voice trembled. "It terrifies me." Dr. Evans nodded thoughtfully, making a note. Then he looked at me. "Mr. Vance, what are your thoughts on all of this?" I opened my mouth and closed it. What could I possibly say? This was all beyond surreal. But looking at Serafina's expectant, almost pleading eyes, the words came out before I could stop them. A reckless, impulsive truth. Well, the methods are unconventional, to say the least. But I don't hate the feeling of being needed by her. Serafina's eyes instantly lit up, as if 1,000 tiny stars had just ignited within their dark depths. She squeezed my hand so hard it ached, but I didn't pull away. Dr. Evans smiled, a gentle, knowing expression. "It certainly seems there's a unique connection between you two. Serafina, I recommend continued interaction, open communication. Take things slowly. Don't rush the process." Leaving the clinic, Serafina was unusually quiet. It wasn't until we were back in the car that she suddenly threw her arms around me, burying her face in the crook of my neck. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice muffled and thick with an emotion I'd never heard from her before. Vulnerability. "Thank you for not rejecting me in front of him." I hesitated for a beat, then slowly, tentatively, returned the embrace. I don't think you're as terrifying as you pretend to be." She pulled back, her eyes shining, suspiciously bright. "Can I kiss you then, just once?" "Just once?" I conceded, my resolve crumbling. She immediately leaned in, her lips brushing against mine, soft as a whisper, a delicate press that tasted faintly of mint and something uniquely Serafina. It was surprisingly gentle. Just as I thought it was over and started to pull back, her hand shot to the back of my head, holding me in place as she deepened the kiss, transforming it from tentative to passionate in a heartbeat. When she finally broke away, a mischievous, triumphant smile played on her lips. Leet. Once can last 10 minutes if we wanted to. My face was burning, hot enough to fry an egg, but she just laughed, looking like a cat that had not only gotten the cream, but also the entire dairy farm. On the drive back to the mansion, Serafina hummed softly to herself, her fingers tapping a light rhythm on the steering wheel. 12. Sunlight streamed through the car window, catching the curve of her cheek, illuminating the fine strands of her dark hair, making her look like an avenging angel bathed in gold. In that moment, she was so breathtakingly beautiful it actually hurt to look at her, and a sudden, terrifying thought struck me. I think I might actually be falling for this crazy, possessive, ridiculously wealthy kidnapper. Back at the mansion, Serafina's mood was visibly lighter, almost buoyant. She hummed as she led me by the hand through the sprawling rose garden, stealing glances at me every few seconds, a sweet, almost shy smile playing on her lips. "Are you hungry?" I asked Mrs. Davison to prepare those honey garlic chicken wings you like, she said, her voice softer and more melodic than I'd ever heard it. I nodded, my mind already racing, trying to figure out how to leverage her good mood to negotiate for a little more freedom. A gilded cage was still a cage, after all. Serafina, however, seemed to possess an uncanny ability to read my thoughts. She stopped abruptly, turning to face me. The dappled sunlight filtering through the rose trellises cast shifting patterns on her face, making her skin look like porcelain. "What are you thinking about, Ethan?" She reached up, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw, her thumb brushing lightly against my lower lip. "Thinking of running away." Her tone was still gentle, almost caressing, but a dangerous glint flickered in the depths of her eyes. I swallowed hard and, on pure instinct, shook my head. "No, not at all. Good boy." She rose on her tiptoes and pressed a quick, soft kiss to my lips. "Good boys get rewards." 13. The reward was being allowed to roam the mansion freely, provided, of course, I remained within her line of sight. Serafina shadowed me like a sleek, possessive panther, never more than a few feet away, her touch frequently brushing my arm, my hand, my shoulder, as if constantly needing to reaffirm my presence. Dinner was indeed a feast. The promised honey garlic chicken wings, a perfectly steamed sea base with ginger and scallions, stir-fried green beans, and a light, aromatic chicken broth with noodles. Serafina served my plate herself, piling it high, yet barely touched her own food, content to watch me eat with that unnervingly intense, focused gaze. "You should eat too," I said, feeling a bit self-conscious. I picked up a chicken wing and, on impulse, placed it on her plate. Her eyes widened, then lit up like a child receiving an unexpected gift. "You're concerned about me?" I was speechless. It was just a piece of chicken. Was it really that big a deal? Apparently it was. Serafina beamed, then delicately began to eat the wing I'd given her, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. For a moment, she looked so innocent, so genuinely happy, it was easy to forget she was my captor. After dinner, she pulled me into the state-of-the-art home theater. The plush leather sofa was enormous, easily capable of seating 4 or 5 people comfortably, but she insisted on us squeezing into one corner, her body pressed close against mine. "What do you want to watch?" she asked, scrolling through an endless library of films on a large touchscreen remote, her hair brushing against my neck, tickling me. "Anything's fine," I said, though my mind was far from the movie choices, still preoccupied with the absurdity of my situation. Serafina eventually selected a classic romantic comedy, something about childhood sweethearts who, after numerous comical misunderstandings, finally find their way to each other. 14. About halfway through the movie, she suddenly pinched my arm hard. "Ow! What was that for?" I yelped, rubbing the sore spot and looking at her bewildered. "You have a childhood sweetheart, don't you?" she asked, her eyes narrowing, her voice laced with a sudden, dangerous edge. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. "I did. Chloe Miller. We'd known each other since kindergarten, lived on the same street, went to the same schools. She was currently in the art program at Northwood. But my gut screamed that admitting this right now would be tantamount to suicide. And no one like that. I stammered, avoiding her gaze, my attempt at deception pathetically transparent. Serafina stared at me for a long, unnerving moment. Then she lunged, sinking her teeth into the side of my neck. It wasn't a playful nip. It was a sharp, painful bite that made me gasp. Liar! She released me, her tongue darting out to lick the faint red marks her teeth had left on my skin. Your file is quite clear. Chloe Miller, age 22, studying dance at Northwood University's College of Fine Arts. Lies at 325 Willow Creek Drive, apartment 502. My eyes widened in disbelief. You even investigated her? I told you, Ethan. I know everything about you. She straddled my lap, her hands cupping my face, forcing me to meet her intense gaze. Tell me, have you slept with her? Of course not. I flushed, indignant. We're just friends. Good friends. Serafina's expression softened marginally, but her fingers still dug into my jaw. Do you like her, Ethan? Romantically? No, not really like that, I said, hedging. She's just a friend I grew up with. You know, a friend. She let out a cold, humorless laugh. Her hand suddenly slipped under my t-shirt, her cool fingers tracing the lines of my abs, sending an unwelcome jolt through me. Then you know what I want to do to you right now, don't you? My entire body went rigid, blood either rushing to my head or draining from it. I couldn't tell. This was too much. Even as a prisoner, I hadn't anticipated this. Serafina, don't. I managed, grabbing her wrist, trying to stop her questing hand. Why not? She whispered, her lips brushing my earlobe, her hot breath fanning across my skin. Don't you want me? It wasn't a question of wanting or not wanting. My mind screamed, but my body, the traitor, was starting to betray my resolve, a reluctant warmth spreading through me under her touch. Just as I felt myself teetering on the edge of some unseen precipice, my cell phone, which I thought was long confiscated, suddenly buzzed loudly from my jeans pocket. 15. Serafina's movements froze. My phone. It was supposed to be with her, locked away. When did you get this back? She purred, her eyes narrowing dangerously as she fished the vibrating phone from my pocket. The caller ID flashed on the screen. Chloe. The air in the lavish home theater crackled, instantly thick with unspoken menace. Serafina's expression shifted from predatory desire to incandescent rage with terrifying speed. Her hand shot out, not to my throat this time, but to grip my shoulder, her fingers like talons. Your little childhood sweetheart is calling, she said, her voice dangerously sweet, a stark contrast to the glacial fury in her eyes. Should we answer? I shook my head mutely, desperately, but she just smiled, a slow, cruel stretching of her lips, and thrust the phone into my hand. Answer it, she commanded, her voice dropping to a silken whisper that brooked no argument. On speaker. My fingers trembled as I pressed the green icon. Chloe Miller's cheerful, slightly anxious voice immediately filled the room. Ethan, oh my God, you finally answered. Where have you been? You haven't replied to any texts. You're not in your dorm. Professor Henderson said you took a leave of absence. What is going on? Chloe, you have the worst timing in the history of bad timings. I thought desperately. Serafina, still perched on my lap, slowly, deliberately began to unbutton her own silk blouse. Her eyes never left mine. She mouthed the words. Tell her you're on vacation. I'm on vacation. I stammered, my gaze unwillingly drawn to the sliver of lace emerging from beneath her blouse. It was a last-minute thing. Didn't have time to tell anyone. Vacation. Chloe's voice was laced with skepticism. Ethan, since when do you have money for a last-minute vacation? And why would you suddenly take a leave of absence? Did something happen? Are you okay? 16. Serafina had now shed her blouse entirely, tossing it onto the floor. Her fingertips, cool and deliberate, started on the buttons of my shirt. I tried to grab her hands to stop her, but she captured my wrists in an iron grip, twisting them slightly, a silent warning that made me wince. Ethan, are you there? What was that noise? And nothing. I bit out, trying to keep the pain from my voice. Just stubbed my toe on the coffee table. Serafina let out a soft, almost inaudible scoff. She released my wrists only to place her hands firmly on my shoulders, pressing me back into the plush sofa cushions, her eyes glittering with a possessive, triumphant light. The pressure was immense, both physical and psychological. You don't sound right, Chloe persisted, her worry escalating. Where are you? I can come over. No. My voice came out louder, more panic than I intended, because Serafina had just picked up one of the heavy velvet throw pillows and was now pressing it firmly against my lower abdomen. Her intentions terrifyingly clear. I just need some time alone. She seemed momentarily satisfied with that, her knuckles lightly tapping my forehead in a mock gesture of approval. But Chloe's next words made the temperature in the room plummet. Is this about what I told you last week? At the grind. I know you said you needed time, but we could try, Ethan. We could see where things go. Ethan, I've had a crush on you since like middle school. Chloe, why? Why are you doing this to me? Serafina's eyes, which had softened fractionally, now blazed with a fresh, terrifying fury. She snatched the phone from my hand, ending the call with a vicious stab of her finger, and hurled it across the room where it hit the thick carpet with a muffled thud. Her fingers dug into my collarbones, her face inches from mine. She likes you. Her voice trembled with rage. She's had a crush on you since middle school. She pushed me further back, her knee pressing uncomfortably against the edge of the sofa as she leaned over me. You met her alone last week, at that coffee shop. I finally realized just how badly things had escalated. Chloe had asked me for coffee last week, but it was just to catch up, or so I thought. She'd never mentioned any of this. This confession, she's lying, or exaggerating. I tried to sit up, to push her away, but she was surprisingly strong. We just talked. About classes. Nothing like this. Serafina let out a chilling laugh. Then, in a surprisingly swift movement, she retrieved the thin cashmere cardigan she'd draped over the back of a chair and slipped it on, though her fingers still pressed against the pulse point in my throat. It doesn't matter now. Her breath fanned across my ear, hot and laden with an unnerving possessiveness. From this moment on, Ethan, you'll be crystal clear on how to respond to anyone else's affections. Before I could react, she grabbed the remote control from the sofa armrest and pressed a button. The massive cinema screen, which had gone dark, flickered to life, not with a movie, but with what looked like a pre-prepared presentation or documentary. 17. Serafina's movements, which had been agitated, suddenly stilled. She tilted her head, a cold, calculating glint replacing the fury in her eyes. It seems your friend is quite persistent. Her voice was terrifyingly soft. She picked up my phone from the floor, powered it off completely, and set on a side table well out of my reach. No matter. Some boundaries are best established unequivocally and in person. She straightened up, smoothed down her cardigan, and then, from a slim leather briefcase I hadn't noticed before, she retrieved a sheaf of papers. She handed them to me. It was a meticulously drafted document, bound like a legal contract. Sign it, she commanded, her fingertip tapping the signature line at the bottom of the last page. As my partner, you need to understand the parameters of our relationship. I stared at the paper, my eyes snagging on a clause highlighted in pale yellow. Article 3, Exclusive Association. The party of the second part, Ethan Vance, agrees to refrain from any and all unsupervised or unapproved solo interactions with members of the opposite sex, or any gender expressing romantic or sexual interest. My fingers felt numb. Serafina leaned down, her fingers gently gripping my chin, forcing me to look up at her. Look at me, Ethan. Her dark eyes reflected the cool, shifting light from the screen. I need you to understand. Some promises, some commitments. They are far more binding than any contract. 18. I met her gaze, and for the first time I saw past the anger. What roiled in those depths wasn't just fury, but a profound, almost desperate insecurity, a raw, possessive fear that was almost tangible. Serafina's fingertips brushed over the edge of the agreement, her voice a mere whisper, like the rustle of silk. This is just a formality, a symbol. She pressed the document gently into my palm. On the large screen, the documentary had shifted to a scene of migratory birds, flying in a V formation against a stark autumn sky. Light can only truly belong to one person, she murmured, her thumb tracing the pulse point on my wrist. Like those birds returning to their sanctuary, Ethan. Some paths are set the moment two souls encounter each other. My other phone, the one Serafina apparently controlled, suddenly vibrated on the table beside her. She glanced at it. A new message. She picked it up, her expression unreadable. It was a picture message from Chloe, a selfie of Chloe and me at the grind from the previous week, both of us smiling. Serafina studied it for a long moment, then picked up a red marker from the table and drew a thick, decisive line through Chloe's image on the phone screen. Or perhaps it was a protective screen over the phone. Then she set the phone down. "Tomorrow, you will accompany me to a client meeting," she stated, pushing the agreement towards me again, the pen now hovering just above the signature line. "It's time everyone understood exactly whose property you are." 19. Then, after what felt like an eternity of charged silence and unspoken negotiations played out in the depths of her eyes, after the papers were signed with a hand that wasn't entirely my own, things shifted. I don't know how much time passed, but later, much later, Serafina lifted her head, her hair disheveled, her breathing still uneven. The fierce dominance in her eyes had softened, replaced by a fragile, uncertain vulnerability. "Do you hate me?" she whispered, her fingers tracing idle patterns on my bare chest. I should have. By every conceivable metric of sanity and self-preservation, I should have despised her. She had kidnapped me, imprisoned me, violated my autonomy in every way imaginable. But looking at her then, her carefully constructed armor momentarily cast aside, revealing the scared, almost childlike core beneath, the word hate wouldn't form on my lips. "I don't know," I finally said, the honesty raw and aching. "It's complicated." She nodded slowly, as if she understood the maelstrom of conflicting emotions warring within me. And then she did something I never, ever would have expected. She began to cry. Not hysterically, not loudly, but with quiet, restrained sobs, as if tears themselves were an unfamiliar, unwelcome intrusion. They trickled down her cheeks, dropping onto my skin, surprisingly hot. "I'm sorry," she choked out, her voice thick with unshed grief. I'm so afraid of losing you." In that moment, Dr. Evans's words about her emotional cognitive disorder clicked into place with a new, painful clarity. Serafina wasn't intentionally cruel, not in the way a sadist is. She was broken, incapable of expressing or even fully understanding love in any conventional sense. For her, possession, control, obsession, these were the only languages of affection she knew. I sighed, a heavy weight settling in my chest, and reached up to gently wipe a tear from her cheek. The simple gesture made her eyes widen, her breath catching, as if she couldn't believe I would offer even a modicum of comfort. "Don't cry," I murmured, my voice rough. "Let's just take it slowly, okay?" Serafina nodded, a shuddering breath escaping her. Her body seemed to sag against mine, the tension slowly seeping out of her. Just as I thought she might drift off to sleep, she spoke again, her voice a faint whisper against my skin. "I'm never going to let you go, Ethan. But I can try. I can try not to be so extreme." It was, I suspected, the biggest concession she was capable of making. I managed a wry, tired smile, stroking her hair. Was this progress? In this bizarre, twisted reality, maybe it was. The air conditioning in the theater, which had earlier felt pleasant, now seemed to chill the sweat-slick skin where we lay entangled on a massive sofa. Serafina must have sensed my shiver. She rose, a little unsteadily, and retrieved a soft cashmere throw from the back of the sofa, draping it over us. "Home?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost hesitant, as if we were just any ordinary couple after an intense movie night, not a kidnapper and her captive. "Yeah," I heard myself respond, the word feeling foreign, yet strangely right. She helped me up, and together, a little unsteadily, we made our way out of the theater and towards the master suite. As we passed the small table where my silenced phone lay, its screen dark, a pang of guilt for Chloe twisted in my gut. But Serafina didn't even glance at it. 20. On the 30th day of my gilded imprisonment, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of the master suite, gazing out at the impeccably manicured rose garden below. A horrifying realization dawned on me. I was getting used to this life. Serafina's arms encircled me from behind, her chin resting gently on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about, my star?" "I'm thinking." I turned in her embrace to face her, that if you set me free right now, I probably wouldn't even know where to go. Her eyes, dark and intense, instantly lit up like twin supernovas igniting in their depths. Really? I nodded. It was the truth. Over the past month, Serafina had, in her own way, been trying. She was still possessive, still prone to bouts of intense jealousy, but the terrifying edges were slightly softer. She progressed from absolute, chained to the bed control to allowing me the freedom of the mansion and its grounds, always under her watchful eye, of course. She'd even started to, occasionally, listen to my explanations about platonic friendships, though these conversations were often followed by various forms of intense reassurance that I was still entirely hers. So, she bit her lower lip, a rare tell that exposed her underlying nervousness. Do you want to leave? I didn't answer immediately. The truth was, this opulent prison was 100 times more comfortable than my cramped dorm room. And Serafina, for all her terrifying possessiveness, lavished me with an intensity of affection that was, in its own twisted way, intoxicating. More importantly, I was starting to enjoy her company, her sharp intellect, even her dark, obsessive devotion. If I said I wanted to leave, I asked, testing the waters, would you let me go? Serafina's expression froze. I could practically see the war raging behind her eyes, her ingrained possessiveness battling against this new, fragile desire to perhaps be better. Finally, she took a deep, shuddering breath. Yes, she whispered, the single word seeming to cost her an immense effort. But I would follow you, Ethan. I would follow you everywhere, until you were willing to come back to me. The answer, which would have terrified any sane person, sent a strange warmth spreading through my chest. For her, this was monumental. I smiled, a genuine smile, and reached up to gently tweak her nose. Liar, I'm not going anywhere. Serafina blinked, then, as if a switch had been flipped, she launched herself into my arms, her embrace so fierce it nearly knocked me off my feet. Don't you ever scare me like that, she mumbled into my chest, her voice thick with emotion, suspiciously close to tears. I thought you were really going to leave. Silly girl, I murmured, stroking her long, dark hair. Who else would put up with your impossible moods? She pulled back enough to glare at me, though the effect was somewhat ruined by the tears still clinging to her eyelashes and the irrepressible smile tugging at her lips. You're the one who can't get enough, as I recall from last night. I quickly clapped a hand over her mouth, my face burning. Hey, boundaries. This woman had absolutely no filter. Serafina just laughed, licking my palm playfully, which made me snatch my hand back as if shocked. 21. She grinned, a triumphant cat-that-got-the-cream expression, and tugged me towards the dining room. Come on, Mrs. Davison made your favorite blueberry pancakes. They're best hot. Breakfast was, as always, an elaborate and delicious affair. The pancakes were fluffy and golden, studded with juicy blueberries, served with real maple syrup and a side of artisanal bacon. A tall glass of freshly squeezed orange juice completed the perfect picture. Serafina sat across from me, her chin propped on her hand, watching me eat with that unervingly focused gaze. Her own plate remained largely untouched. Aren't you eating? I asked, spearing a piece of pancake and, on impulse, holding it out to her. She opened her mouth and accepted the bite, her eyes curving into happy crescents. It tastes better when you feed me. This kind of sweet, slightly cloying domesticity had become the norm over the past month. Initially, my every waking thought had been consumed with escape. Now, I found myself anticipating these quiet moments with her. Serafina, despite her deeply flawed nature, poured every ounce of her fierce, obsessive being into loving me, into caring for me. And for someone like me, who, despite the charm, had always felt strangely alone and misunderstood, this intense, all-consuming focus was addicting. It was the first time I'd ever felt truly, unequivocally seen and wanted, albeit in the most twisted way possible. So, what's on the agenda for today? I asked, taking a sip of juice. Serafina smiled mysteriously. That's a secret. After breakfast, she led me upstairs, not to the master suite, but to a room down the hall that had, until now, always been locked. She pushed open the door and gestured for me to enter. I peered inside, curious, and then froze, completely stunned. The large, sun-drenched room had been converted into an art studio. Easels stood scattered around. Canvases in various states of completion leaned against the walls. And every single painting, every sketch, every charcoal drawing was of me. There I was, captured in 100 different moments, reading by the window in the library, sunlight illuminating my profile, asleep on the sofa, an open book tinted on my chest, eating, my cheeks slightly puffed out, even a few from before she took me, clearly sketched from a distance. The most astonishing thing was the sheer volume and the timeline. These weren't the work of a few weeks. The dates meticulously noted in the corners of some pieces stretched back over a year. These? You painted all of these? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, a strange mix of awe and unease swirling within me. Serafina nodded, a rare blush tinting her cheeks. I've been painting since I was a child. It's the only way I ever really knew how to connect with things. 22. The first time I saw you on campus, she continued softly, I couldn't stop myself. I had to draw you. I walked closer, examining the canvases. Each brushstroke was incredibly detailed, filled with an almost painful intensity of emotion. The earliest sketches were a little hesitant, the lines searching, but as they progressed, the likeness became uncanny, capturing not just my features, but expressions, moods, even the subtle curve of my eyelashes. Exactly how long were you stalking me? I asked, trying for a light, teasing tone, though my heart was hammering. 368 days, she answered without a moment's hesitation. She pointed to a vibrant oil painting. This was at the fall semester kickoff concert last year. You were playing guitar on stage, wearing that white linen shirt. This one, she gestured to a delicate watercolor, was in the university library. You'd fallen asleep at a table, and you had an imprint from the textbook on your cheek. And this one, listening to her recount each moment, each stolen observation, with such vivid, loving detail, a strange warmth spread through my chest, chasing away some of the lingering fear. To think that, unbeknownst to me, someone had been watching me with such fierce, unwavering focus, memorizing every tiny detail. You're a total psycho, I murmured, but the words lacked any real bite. Instead, I turned and pulled her into a hug. Serafina stiffened in my arms for a fraction of a second, then melted against me, her arms wrapping tightly around my waist. Only for you, Ethan. Only ever for you. We stood there, holding each other for a long time, the scent of oil paints and her lavender perfume mingling in the air. The silence was eventually broken by the shrill ring of her cell phone. Serafina frowned at the caller ID, her expression instantly hardening. My father, she answered, her tone respectful but distant. Father? Yes. No, I haven't. He's quite well, actually. I tactfully moved away to study a particularly striking charcoal portrait, but I couldn't help but overhear snippets of her conversation. Bring him to meet you. I'll consider it. No, that's not what I meant. Very well. Goodbye. After she ended the call, Serafina looked deeply troubled. I walked back to her, taking her hand. What's wrong? My father. He wants to meet you, she said, the words coming out with difficulty, as if it were a decision fraught with peril. I raised an eyebrow. Finally time to meet the parents. I was beginning to think you were going to keep me hidden away in your princess tower forever. I seriously considered it, she admitted, her expression deadly serious. But you deserve to be formally introduced to my family. As mine. That last word, mine, spoken with such quiet conviction, sent a shiver down my spine. Not entirely unpleasant this time. For someone like Serafina, whose concept of family was likely as complex and fraught as everything else in her life, inviting me into that sphere was a significant step. It meant she was genuinely trying to navigate this, whatever this was, in a way that included the outside world, at least her version of it. When, tomorrow evening, she said, chewing on her lower lip. If you don't want to go, I'll go. I interrupted. Bound to happen sooner or later. After all, I've technically eloped with his precious daughter, haven't I? Serafina's eyes widened. I kidnapped you. 23. And who's keeping whom captive now? I countered with a smile, gesturing towards the open door of the studio, and by extension, the theoretical freedom of the mansion. I could walk out of here any time I choose, within these walls at least. But I'm choosing to stay. So, technically, I'm a willing captive at this point. This seemed to please her immensely. Serafina's eyes sparkled, and she launched herself at me for another enthusiastic, slightly bone-crushing hug. My little star knows just what to say. However, I hesitated, a new thought occurring to me. Before I meet your father, I think I should see my parents. They haven't seen their son in over a month. They must be worried sick despite your creative texting. Serafina's body tensed in my arms. You want to go home? The question was laced with a familiar possessive anxiety. You'll come with me, I said, gently tilting her chin up so she had a look at me. Every new girlfriend has to meet the parents eventually. It's tradition. Girlfriend, who said anything about, she started to protest, then the actual meaning of my words sank in. Wait, you want to take me to meet your parents? Well, I said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Unless you'd prefer to remain my secret billionaire kidnapper who's surprisingly good in bed indefinitely? The expression on Serafina's face was one of pure, dumbfounded elation. She opened her mouth, closed it again, apparently speechless. Finally, she just nodded vigorously, her dark hair flying around her face. That afternoon, we drove to my parents' modest suburban house. Serafina was a nervous wreck the entire way, constantly fiddling with her impeccably tailored dress, readjusting her hair, and asking me at least 10 times, "How do I look? Ami presentable. Will they hate me?" "You look beautiful, Serafina." Stunning, as always. I reassured her for the umpteenth time. "Relax. My parents are pretty laid back." Famous last words. As we pulled up to the curb in front of the familiar two-story colonial, my own palms started to sweat. How exactly was I supposed to explain my month-long, mysterious disappearance? And how, in God's name, was I going to introduce Serafina? "Mom, Dad, this is Serafina Hayes. She abducted me, held me prisoner in her mansion, and, well, now we're kind of a thing." As the elevator in their apartment building, they downsized after I went to college, ascended, Serafina suddenly gripped my hand, her fingers ice cold. "What if they don't like me, Ethan?" I was astonished to realize she was genuinely terrified. This formidable, powerful, usually unshakable woman was actually worried about what my middle-class parents would think of her. The realization softened something deep inside me. "They will," I said, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "Because I really like you." Serafina's eyes instantly welled up. She quickly ducked her head, but not before I saw the raw emotion shimmering there. When the doorbell chimed, my mom flung open the door. The moment she saw me, her face crumpled. "Ethan! Oh, my baby, where have you been? No calls, no texts, we thought. We thought you'd run off with the circus, or worse." Her tirade, however, came to an abrupt halt when her gaze landed on Serafina, standing silently, elegantly, behind me. My dad, drawn by the commotion, appeared in the hallway, and he too froze, staring. "Mom, Dad," I began, steeling myself. "This is Serafina Hayes. She's, my girlfriend." I braced for the explosion. I've been staying with her for the past month. After a beat of stunned, awkward silence, my mom suddenly broke into a wide, surprisingly enthusiastic smile. She rushed forward, taking Serafina's hands. "Oh, my dear, you're even more beautiful than Chloe described. Come in, make yourselves at home." I gaped, utterly dumbfounded by my mother's 180-degree turn. Serafina looked equally bewildered, allowing herself to be led into the living room like a dazed automaton, where she perched primly on the edge of the sofa. "So," my dad said, pulling me aside and lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, "this is the mystery heiress?" "What mystery heiress? Who's Chloe?" "Chloe Miller, your friend. She came by last week in a bit of a state. Said you'd been swept off your feet by some incredibly wealthy, possessive girl and had basically vanished off the face of the earth." My dad's expression was a mixture of amusement and concern. We didn't quite believe her. Until now. I groaned inwardly, running a hand through my hair. Of course Chloe would go to my parents. And of course they'd be partially clued in. In a living room, my mom was already deep in conversation with Serafina. Miraculously, Serafina, who usually radiated an aura of untouchable ice, was responding to my mom's gentle questions like a shy, polite schoolgirl. It was the most surreal thing I'd ever witnessed. And what kind of work do you do, dear? I'm currently overseeing several key divisions of my family's company. Oh, that sounds very impressive. Do you have a large family? It's just my father and myself now. My mother passed away when I was 10. Oh, you poor child. I watched, mesmerized. Serafina answered every question with quiet composure, even showing a rare flicker of vulnerability when she mentioned her mother. By the time my mom brought out tea and her famous lemon poppy seed muffins, she had clearly been won over, cooing about how lovely and well-mannered and intelligent Serafina was. My dad, though mostly silent, was watching Serafina with a softened, appraising gaze. As we were leaving, my mom pulled me into the kitchen for a quick, whispered conference. She's a lovely girl, Ethan. A bit intense in the way she looks at you, almost like she's afraid you'll disappear if she blinks. But if you're happy, that's all that matters. I had to suppress a hysterical laugh. My mom's intuition was legendary. She'd zeroed in on Serafina's core Yandere essence in under an hour. She's definitely special, I said, opting for understatement. But she's very good to me. I can see that, my mom said, her eyes twinkling knowingly. Her whole face lights up when you're in the room, like you're the only person in the world. Back in the car, Serafina let out a long, shaky breath, slumping against the leather seat. That was the most terrifying experience of my life. You? Terrified? I teased gently. The great Serafina Hayes, quaking in her Chanel boots. She shot me a weak glare, devoid of its usual heat. They're your parents, Ethan. What if they hadn't liked me? They loved you, I assured her, meaning it. My mom even cornered me to say I'd better treat you right. Serafina's eyes widened, then glowed with a soft, pleased light. Really? Really? I confirmed with a smile. Now, tomorrow night, when I meet your father, that's when I'll be the one quaking. At the mention of her father, Serafina's expression became serious again. My father, he could be very exacting. If he says anything harsh, please don't take it to heart. Don't worry, I said, reaching over to take her hand. For you, I can handle anything. The simple words seemed to strike a deep chord within her. Serafina leaned across the console, her eyes dark and luminous, and gave me a slow, lingering kiss that tasted of relief and something far deeper. I love you, Ethan, she whispered against my lips, her voice so soft I almost didn't catch it. It was the first time she'd ever said those 3 words. Her actions, her obsessive devotion, had screamed it for weeks, but hearing it spoken aloud, so simply, so vulnerably, made my heart clench. I love you too, Serafina. I heard myself respond, the words feeling surprisingly natural, surprisingly true. You crazy, possessive, wonderful woman. 26. The next evening, Serafina drove me to what she called the Hayes family estate. If her private mansion was luxurious, this place was practically a palace. A sprawling, classic European-style chateau, set on what must have been hundreds of acres of manicured grounds. The fountain in the circular driveway alone was bigger than my parents' entire house. Your family really goes in for real estate, huh? I said faintly, my palms sweating again despite my earlier bravado. Serafina squeezed my hand. Don't be nervous. I'm right here. A formal, stone-faced butler led us into a vast drawing room where Serafina's father, Mr. Alistair Hayes, awaited us. He was a tall, imposing man in his late 50s, with Serafina's sharp, intelligent features, but his eyes were even more piercing, radiating an aura of immense power and unyielding authority. He looked like he could command armies or topple governments with a single word. Father, Serafina greeted him, her voice respectful, though I noted a subtle lack of warmth. This is Ethan Vance. I offer my hand, trying for a firm, confident grip. Mr. Hayes, it's an honor to meet you. Alistair Hayes subjected me to a thorough, unnervingly silent appraisal, his gaze sweeping over me from head to toe, as if cataloging my every strength and weakness. Just when I was bracing myself for some cutting remark or outright dismissal, a slow, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Please sit. Make yourselves comfortable. Dinner, surprisingly, was not the ordeal I had anticipated. Mr. Hayes, though undeniably formidable, was also a brilliant conversationalist, discoursing knowledgeably on global economics, Renaissance art, and cutting-edge biotech with equal ease. We found common ground, discussing our shared appreciation for a rather obscure indie rock band, much to Serafina's visible surprise. Serafina has always struggled with what the doctors call emotional cognitive disorder. Mr. Hayes stated abruptly, as dessert was being served, his gaze fixed on me. Her mother had it as well. It appears to be a familial trait. Beneath the table, Serafina's hand found mine, her grip tight. "I'm aware of that, sir," I said calmly, meeting his intense stare. "But she's been making remarkable progress. Because of you, Mr. Hayes stated, not as a question, but as a fact. In this past month alone, she's called me more times than in the previous 10 years combined. And every conversation, invariably, has been about you." I glanced at Serafina in surprise. She ducked her head, a deep blush staining her cheeks. "I have only one question for you, young man." Mr. Hayes set down his brandy snifter. "Are your feelings for my daughter genuine, or are you here under some form of duress?" "Father!" Serafina gasped, looking horrified. I took a deep breath, holding her father's gaze. "Initially, sir, yes, there was an element of duress. A significant one. But as I've gotten to know Serafina, I've come to see a purity in her emotions, a fierce, unwavering devotion that, frankly, I've never encountered before. She may not express love in conventional ways, but her love, in its own way, is more real, more intensely felt than anything I've ever known." Alistair Hayes regarded me silently for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. "A commendable answer." 27. After dinner, Mr. Hayes requested my presence in his study for a private conversation. Serafina looked anxious, clearly wanting to accompany me, but a single, sharp glance from her father had her subsiding. Serafina's condition. Mr. Hayes began, standing before a massive, mullioned window that overlooked the darkened estate, his back to me. "The medical term is, as you know, emotional cognitive disorder. But in our family, there are older, more esoteric interpretations. We sometimes refer to it as the mark of the destined." "The destined?" I echoed, intrigued. "They perceive ordinary emotions in a muted, almost abstract way," he explained, turning to face me, his eyes glinting in the lamplight. "But they possess an uncanny, almost preternatural ability to recognize their fated one." Serafina's mother was the same with me. For her, it was instantaneous, an unbreakable bond that lasted until the day she died. A shiver went down my spine. It explained so much, Serafina's unwavering certainty, her insistence that only I could make her feel. "Your own unique charm," as Serafina calls it. Mr. Hayes continued, his gaze thoughtful. "I've had it discreetly looked into. It's not mere attractiveness, is it? It's a heightened empathic resonance, an ability to perceive and subtly influence the emotional states of others. You and Serafina, one who can perceive but cannot fully express, the other who can express but struggles to perceive truly. A fascinating, almost perfect symbiosis. This revelation was like a missing piece of a cosmic puzzle slotting into place. Our meeting, her obsession, my strange acceptance. Perhaps it wasn't just madness. Perhaps it was something far stranger, far more fated. "I will take good care of her, sir," I said, the words a solemn vow. Mr. Hayes nodded, a hint of something that might have been approval in his eyes. He opened a drawer in his antique desk and retrieved a thick manila envelope. "This contains the details of Serafina's primary trust fund and a significant portion of her non-voting shares in Hayes Corp. They will be transferred to your name upon your marriage." I immediately held up my hands. "Oh no, sir, I couldn't. I'm not with Serafina for her money." "I know you're not, Ethan," Mr. Hayes said, a rare, almost human smile touching his lips. "But it is tradition. The men who marry into the Hayes family are well provided for." 28. When I rejoined Serafina in the drawing room, she rushed to my side, her eyes wide with anxiety. "What did he say to you? Was he awful?" "He said," I paused dramatically, drawing out the suspense. "He said he fully expects me to marry you." Serafina stared at me, her jaw dropping. She whirled around to look at her father, who simply inclined his head with a faint, enigmatic smile. Her eyes instantly filled with tears. As we were leaving the Hayes estate, Serafina was unusually quiet, lost in thought. It wasn't until we were back in her car, pulling away from the imposing gates, that she finally spoke, her voice small and hesitant. You'd really be willing to marry me, Ethan? What? Are you having second thoughts about marrying me? Yes. No. She practically shouted the yes, then blushed furiously, lowering her voice to a mortified whisper. Yes, I'm willing. More than willing. If you're truly willing to marry me. I chuckled, starting the engine. Let's talk about it when we get home. Back at her mansion, I led Serafina out into the moonlit rose garden. The air was fragrant with the scent of 1,000 blooming roses, the atmosphere ethereal and deeply romantic. Serafina, I began, my heart pounding. I dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet-lined box from my pocket. Our beginning was unconventional, to say the least. But this past month has shown me, beyond any doubt, that you are the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. Will you? Before I could finish, Serafina, to my utter astonishment, also dropped to one knee, mirroring my posture. She fumbled in her own pocket and produced an identical, albeit slightly larger and more opulent, velvet box. I was going to ask you tonight, she exclaimed, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and delight. We stared at each other, then at the ring boxes in our hands, and burst out laughing. Her diamond was, predictably, about 3 times the size of the modest one I'd managed to procure, and it glittered like a captured star in the moonlight. Great minds, huh? I said, still chuckling. Then let's do this properly, Serafina said, her eyes shining. She extended her hand. Me first. Ethan Vance, you are the only light in my world. Without you, everything is darkness and silence. Will you be my husband, and allow me to imprison you with my love forever? The proposal was so quintessentially Serafina, I couldn't help but laugh again, a warm, happy sound. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Then I took my ring, a simple, elegant platinum band, and slipped it on her finger. Serafina Hayes, even though you kidnapped me, held me captive, and, yes, occasionally terrorized me into submission. She playfully punched my arm, her cheeks flushed. This has been the most incredible, exhilarating adventure of my life. Will you marry me? And let me spend a lifetime trying to heal your wonderfully complex heart. I will, she cried, launching herself into my arms, nearly toppling both of us into a prize-winning rose bush. We clung to each other there in the fragrant garden, under the silvery glow of the moon, exchanging kisses that tasted of roses, moonlight, and the promise of a beautifully complicated forever. Serafina's tears dampened my shirt, but I knew they were tears of pure, unadulterated happiness. She whispered against my ear, her voice thick with emotion, my condition. I think it's really getting better. Tonight, when you asked me to marry you, I felt something new, something I've never felt before. What was it? I murmured, stroking her hair. Complete happiness, she said, her voice filled with a quiet awe. Not just the satisfaction of possessing you, Ethan, but the overwhelming joy of being loved by you, just as intensely, just as completely, in return. The words warmed me to my core. I held her tighter, pressing a kiss to the crown of her head. This is just the beginning, my love. You'll feel so much more. I promise. 29, the wedding took place 3 months later. Serafina, predictably, had initially envisioned a lavish, society event with a guest list in the thousands. But I managed to persuade her to opt for something more intimate, more us, a simple, heartfelt ceremony in the Hayes family rose garden, attended only by our closest family and a few trusted friends. Chloe Miller was there. She watched Serafina and me exchange vows, her expression a complex mixture of old hurt and new understanding. Afterwards, she approached me, offering a small, genuine smile. You actually look happy, Ethan. Truly happy. I am, I said, taking Serafina's hand, my new wedding band a comfortable weight on my finger. It started unconventionally, but she's the one who truly gets me. Serafina, standing beside me, radiated a possessive but surprisingly serene contentment. She didn't glare at Chloe, didn't make any snide remarks, just tightened her grip on my arm, a silent declaration of ownership that was, for her, a remarkable display of restraint. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife and said, "You may now kiss the bride," Serafina grabbed my tie, pulled me close, and gave me a kiss that was both breathtakingly passionate and wonderfully, publicly legal, all to the amused laughter and applause of our guests. 30 married life with Serafina was, surprisingly, far more peaceful than I could have ever imagined. The Yandere tendencies hadn't vanished entirely, of course. She still had her quirks, daily phone inspections, though she no longer deleted contacts, merely scrutinized them. Frequent video calls to check in whenever I was away on business, which, as a new executive at Hayes Corp., happened occasionally. And yes, sometimes if I spent a little too much time chatting animatedly with a female colleague, there would be consequences later that evening, usually involving a great deal of intense, focused reassurance of her paramount place in my life. But these moments have become less about fear and more about the unique, passionate, and admittedly kinky dynamic of our relationship. They were part of our strange love story. Her emotional cognitive disorder, as Dr. Evans and her father had called it, genuinely seemed to be improving. She was learning to navigate the complex spectrum of human emotion with greater nuance, even beginning to form tentative but real bonds of affection with my parents, who adored her in their own bewildered way. Every time I saw her make a conscious effort to respond to a social situation with normal empathy, a wave of pride and profound tenderness would wash over me. As for my own charm, under Serafina's constant, unwavering, and highly possessive attention, it had become a non-issue. She was like a super magnet, drawing all that ambient, attractive energy toward herself, neutralizing its effect on everyone else. For the first time in my life, I could walk down a street or sit in a coffee shop without attracting a swarm of unwanted admirers. It was liberating. Dr. Evans said today that my progress is phenomenal, Serafina murmured one night, snuggled against my chest as we lay in bed, the scent of roses drifting in from the open window. He said, "It's all thanks to you." I stroked her long, dark hair, feeling the steady beat of her heart against mine. "It's because you're working so hard, my love." "No, it's not," she said, tilting her head back to look at me, her dark eyes soft and luminous in the dim light. "It's because you love me, Ethan." I smiled and leaned down to kiss her, a long, slow kiss that spoke of acceptance, passion, and a love that had blossomed in the most unlikely and arguably most insane of circumstances. I didn't argue. She was right. Yes, I loved her. From that first terrifying day of captivity, through all the fear and confusion, a strange, unbreakable bond had formed. And Serafina, my beautifully flawed, fiercely possessive wife, loved me with an intensity that still sometimes took my breath away. She was day by day learning new ways to express that love, yet she never lost that core of passionate, borderline obsessive devotion that had, paradoxically, made me feel more cherished and alive than I ever had before. This was our story, a story of captivity and freedom, of obsession and devotion, of two imperfect souls who, against all odds, had found their perfect, if perfectly unconventional, match.